India overwhelmed New Zealand to claim third T20 World Cup title. There was only ever going to be one ending. Not because India were inevitable. T20 cricket is still a capricious and unsparing format, and we are told it does not do inevitable. And yet here they were, having taken a few games to fully locate themselves again, and then producing 250-plus scores in their last four, playing a brand of cricket so complete and so suffocating that it began to feel almost offensive to the format's own sensibilities. On the grandest stage of all, in front of 86824, almost every one of them, unilaterally and deafeningly their own, at the Narendra Modi Stadium, Abhishek Sharma 52 off 21, Sanju Samson 89 off 46, and Ishan Kishan 54 off 25, helped India plunder 255. New Zealand, fine and worthy finalists, barely laid a glove on that total, as India became the first side to lift 3 men's T20 World Cups, as well as the first side to defend this title, their dominance underscored by the winning margin of 96 runs. The setting of this win had its own narrative circle. The other final in Ahmedabad on November 19, 2023, was constantly invoked in the build-up, as had a game 2 weeks prior against South Africa. Frighteningly, those remain the only 2 losses over 4 ICC white ball tournaments, the full extent of India's fallibility in this period. When Mitchell Santner won the toss and asked India to bat, there was another small nod to the past in it, and then Abhishek Sharma and Sanju Samson walked out and the past became irrelevant. This opening partnership, forged in the aftermath of Barbados 2024, and the big-name retirements that followed, was the engine of this alpha version of India's T20 side. By the time they were done with a 98-run stand in just 7-1 overs, India effectively had one hand on their third ICC triumph in 3 years after going without one for 11 years before that. Still, there was no premonition of what the final had in store. Not after India managed 12 in the first 2 overs, one of which came from Glenn Phillips, in keeping with the theme of bowling off spinners at India's left-hand dominant top order. Phillips gave away just 5, but was curiously kept out of the attack for the rest of the innings. The floodgates opened instead through Jacob Duffy, brought in to replace Cole McConchie, who had taken 2 wickets in his only over in the semi-final against South Africa. Abhishek, having shown early restraint, found Duffy's pace and fuller lengths to his liking, and cleared the infield straight down the ground twice. Samson added one of his own. India were running. What followed was a power play that consumed New Zealand whole. Santner turned to a 4th different bowler, but everyone he turned to was profligate. Lockie Ferguson went for 24, while Henry came back to give away 21, and every conceived plan to contain this opening pair dissolved into the Ahmedabad night. It was a cruel flashback of the bilateral series between the sides just before this World Cup, and they hadn't even reached the final over yet. That belonged entirely to Abhishek, who, upon spotting 2 fielders parked on the offside, simply walked across his stumps and hooked Duffy over the leg side for the cheek of it. The world's no. 1-ranked T20I batter reached an 18-ball half-century, the fastest of this tournament in a World Cup final, a strangely lukewarm run coming into the game thoroughly and emphatically buried. In a match-losing power play, New Zealand bowled 44 balls, conceded 92, and sent down a personal worst 8 wides in this phase. The post-power play phase, though, began tidily enough, as Santner's own over cost just 6 before Rachin Ravindra struck first ball to remove Abhishek for a 21-ball 52. But Ishan Kishan arrived at no. 3 with no interest in a dip in tempo, announcing himself with a gloriously flick-punched 4 off Ravindra through mid-wicket, then guiding an overcompensated full ball past point for another. By the 10th over, India had 127. Samson, relatively subdued by his own lofty standards from the previous 2 games, still found his way to a 33-ball half-century, joining only Shahid Afridi and Virat Kohli in the history of men who have scored 50s in both the semi-final and final of a T20 World Cup. He celebrated the distinction by tearing into Ferguson for 2 sixes and a 4, then launching Ravindra for 3 sixes on the bounce. At the other end, Kishan raced to a 23-ball half-century as India passed 200, with 5 death overs still to go. The broadcaster's forecast had them reaching 290. Those ambitions were arrested briefly by an unlikely source. James Neesham struck 3 times in the 16th over 2 via full tosses to remove the set Samson and Kishan. Suryakumar Yadav scooped his first ball straight to Ravindra at long leg. India went 16 balls without a boundary as Hardik Pandya struggled for timing, while New Zealand found some belated reward with their wide off-pace deliveries yanking batters out of shape, and the total began to look like it might settle somewhere under 240. When Pandya fell for a 13-ball 18, the door was fractionally ajar. Then Shivam Dube walked in and closed it with a thud. 3 fours and 2 sixes off Neesham's final over effectively ended whatever fleeting hope New Zealand had cultivated and powered India to 255. There on New Zealand's best hopes lay on their opening pair, producing an encore of their semi-final performance. Finn Allen was even dropped by Dube in the first over, and a 21-run second over from Pandya set the foundations for a strong start. That was about as good as it got for them as Axar Patel brought on to bowl the third over won his matchup against Allen, having him caught at Longan. Then for a second game in a row, Jasprit Bumrah struck with his first delivery a slower ball that Ravindra attempted to play a pickup shot to, and found Kishan at deep backward square leg. Before the power play ended, Axar had cleaned up Glenn Phillips to begin the procession. Tim Seifert brought New Zealand some joy by taking down Varun Chakravarthi for 16 to complete a 23-ball 50. Chakravarthi had his man in the next over with Kishan completing another fine catch in the deep. Before that dismissal, Hardik Pandya had Mark Chapman dragging on. At 72 for 5, the match was effectively done. Still, there was some time for Bumrah 4 for 15 to conjure more off-cutter magic as he cleaned up Neesham and Henry off successive deliveries, and then dislodged Santner's timber to rubber stamp his class on another phenomenal tournament for him after his player of the tournament winning heroics 18 months ago. Brief scores: India 255 in 20 over Sanju Samson 89, Ishan Kishan 54, Abhishek Sharma 52, James Neesham 346 beat New Zealand, Tim Seifert 52, Jasprit Bumrah 415 by 96 runs.